Hi, Gordon Andrus here. Today I want to do a quick video talking about this knife that I got from Scott Teschner. It's a Warren Cliff model. It's one of his trimming knives. And in the last few days as I've been using it, I've discovered some things about it that are particularly nice. So I want to explain some of those things to you folks. This First, let's talk about the steel. This is a high carbon stainless steel knife blade steel, and it's tempered perfectly. It's got, see, it'll flex without bending and without breaking. And that's one of the things that I discovered I really like about this particular knife. It comes from Scott, just crazy sharp, and that's a nice thing to get a knife out and just have it be ready to go. This drop point is nice. It can reach into some little, some little tight little spots if you're using just the tip of it. You got to be careful though that you're not gonna, if you're using just the tip, you've got to really watch the rest of the blade, that you're not gonna get, cut yourself. But the grind is flat on both sides, much like a round knife would be done, and then just barely bevels off with a polished tiny bevel at the edge that will protect the edge from breaking or bending. As hard as this steel is, I imagine if it got that thin, it would probably just break the edge off. So it's been ground and sharpened to protect the blade, but also to perform at its peak. It doesn't taper more around this curve, so it doesn't get thinner this way as it goes to the point, which is good because it stays strong right out to the edge. When you're sharpening it, you need to really be careful right there and try not to round that point off. It's just a beautiful knife. The craftsmanship is exceptional. These bolsters are straight across. This is a nice one. It's a micarta with this red liner. It's just a beautiful knife. But let's see what it does. I've got I've got a few other knives out here that I want to compare it to a little bit and show the things that it can do that these can do, and then talk about where you might need these other knives. This certainly won't do everything. No knife will do everything in a saddle shop. But I've got several different pieces of leather here. This is a piece of just veg tan, and this is a piece of Chrome XL from Horween. It's got some oil in it. Cuts really nice. This is a challenging little piece of leather. This is water buffalo, and it's only 2 ounce. It's thin stuff, but it's super tough and elastic. That's why it works so well for boots, things like boots, or it would work really well for small personal items also. It would wear like iron. It also makes it difficult to cut because of its stretch and its toughness. Even a razor sharp knife, when you go to cut it, it would rather drag the whole piece of leather than actually cut it. So we'll see how it handles that. This is a piece of alum latigo, alum tan latigo, which I find works exceptionally well for saddle strings. I'm going to bevel this piece of string with it, and then also see how it does for skiving it. And that's going to be the thing that I think you'll be real interested in today. The skiving properties, the ability to use this knife for fine skiving. So let's get going here. The thing that I probably use a trimming knife most for in a saddle shop is just for trimming fleece on skirts, or for cutting out uh, shearling. I'm going to tilt the angle here a little bit and zoom in and try and keep everything in frame. Okay. Let's tip down a little bit more. Okay, that should be a good spot. So, you know, with a knife like this, what I like to do, it'll just pierce that easy, and then you can be, you know, fleece especially, it holds itself up off the bench, and you know, it just cuts that like butter. That's what I would do with if this was a skirt. I've just glued this piece of fleece to it, and to come off this back side, I just tip it and go that way, get that started. Now I can open this up, and I'm just resting the edge of that knife right against the skirt, and it's effortless. So I'm trying to keep my head out of the way so I'm not seeing, but let's look at this. That I'm a little bit away because I was back away from the edge, and let's see what happens to clean that up. Couldn't do that if it wasn't as thin as it is. It just wouldn't be able to trim that thin of a piece of such soft material away from an edge. So now I'm holding it, pushing it against the edge of this skirting, and I've got it on a bit, you know, drop down on a bit of an angle, and it just peels right around there. Over here I don't have glue on it, so it's not the same, but okay, well, you get the idea. It handled that beautifully. There's no, I can't even see a glue line in there. It just is an even blend right from the skirting into the fleece. Okay, so the other knife that I would use for that would be a head knife like this one. I think Scott calls this a Philadelphia pattern, and it works the same way, except you can push it away from you and see the cut as you're going. That's a nice thing about this knife, is that, you know, what it'll do like that. And I always have more control pushing a knife in most instances than pulling it. But we can see that that this knife can handle that as well as the Philadelphia pattern. This is what I would use for cutting saddle parts out, you know, above the bench, out of a full side of leather. It's just an exceptional knife. Okay, so it handled that soft stuff just beautifully well. This is the Alum Tan Leather. It's got a little bit of a tough grain. Make sure I was in the frame there. I keep getting out of my frame on this. Okay, so now we can see it. Now I can hear it cutting more in a tougher fibered leather like this. But this is oiled, so it does have some oil, so it does cut reasonably well. It's difficult to skive though, so we'll come back and look at that when I do some skiving. This is the Chrome XL, and it's a chrome tanned leather, but it has some oil in it, so let's get back here. I pretty effortless on that. Then we're going to see how that skives too. This is the water buffalo, and this stuff, when you go to start cutting it, you see how the blade just pulls it along and it just wants to bunch up. It's barely nicked that corner there. If you compare that to a piece of veg tan, you know, it's gonna just cut it. So that's a different texture, and it's also part of the problem here is that this is so thin, but it's also just really tough. It wants to stretch rather than cut. So I'm just going to pin it down and get it started. And I can definitely feel its resistance, but it cut beautifully and nice and clean. This stuff can be a real challenge to skive, and I love my bell skiver, but we're going to see how this knife can make a skive that's similar to a bell skiver. Okay, I think I've gone through pretty much all the different leathers that I've got here, so let's take a look at a couple of blades. This is a large French head that Scott made. This is an really old Osborne skiving tool, and you can see it has the curve built into it, which is like a bell skiver. It's the same principle, and it'll sneak up on an edge and you can get a finer feather with that curve in the blade. A round knife can do a similar thing because of the curve in its blade. It can come in and do a similar kind of job. What I found about this knife is that because of its flex, I can build that curve. I can flex that curve into the blade. So let me show you what I mean. So I can get down here and you can see that it's flexing, and then I can just tip it, get the cut started, and bring out an angle here. And then I'm going to push the knife with the thumb of my left hand. I'm holding the leather down, I'm going to push it. And with this I found you really need to get a nice sharp angle this way for the knife to want to skive it. So tip it, get it started, level it out. I mean, that is just, because of that curve, it comes in and it doesn't want to carve off the leather and make a nasty edge on that. It's pretty much a perfect skive in a difficult to skive leather. This is a skiving knife that I made years ago, and it's just as sharp. I just freshened it up. And it's made specifically for this job. So, but see how because of its stiffness and that it didn't take the form of that curve, it made a ragged edge there. I have to be more careful with a knife like this and sneak up on that edge more. This one handled it just as well. If not, actually a little better. It did a great job on that. And that's a tough piece of leather to skive. Let's see how it handles this alum. Again, I need a pretty steep angle. And see, I thought that I had gone too deep there, and I thought that I'd nicked that out right there as I cut it, but it didn't, because I had the curve flexed into it, and it's coming off of this granite right into the leather, and that being able to put that flex in it is what's making it work so well. Okay, the Chrome XL is just gonna, I couldn't be happier. Look how thin that got right out to the edge, but it didn't nick it. I've just been really impressed with this blade's ability to do that. This Osborne skiver has that built into it, but I don't. Yeah, it also wants to scorp up like that, which I just have to. It doesn't feel to me like it was quite as easy to control. It's probably because the blade gets thicker. It may not be quite as sharp as that, but that's been one of my go-to skivers for years. But this one is really, I don't know, that's just really easy to control. It really is. That's just nice. Okay, a round knife would do the same kind of a skive, but because the blade's stiff, it's going to be more difficult to control out at the edge. It certainly works well, but it's going to be great in a piece of veg tan skirting. It's just going to be, it's made for that. It does a beautiful job of that. But let's see what this one does. Oh, I also wanted to show this. This is a good paring knife too. It just, that's pretty nice. Well, I'm going to find a place to cut that out. I'll just edit that out of there. That was just me. So here's a piece of thin veg tan leather. We'll see how it handles this dry. That's just like I would expect it to perform, and it goes right around that corner. So nice. Yeah, that's pretty nice. That is really nice. Okay. What else? Oh, this piece of string. Now this knife is a little less than ideal for what I'm going to do right now because of its length. I've got to be really careful when I do this that my middle finger doesn't get cut. A little bit shorter blade would be better. And I do this kind of beveling anymore with a lace beveler. But I can get up here, put that blade in the bench just a little bit. Be careful you don't break it off. And I just put a really nice bevel on that string with that. And I am touching the blade with that middle finger right there. So you've got to be really careful. But it just does a nice job on that. So let me grab a Okay. So now if I get, I'll be right back. These are the rounders that I use for rounding strings off. So once that's been beveled like that, I can pull it through this rounder. Especially if I put a little moisture on it. Okay, there, see where it's been beveled. I'll just pull this through here. It has to go through. I've got the side up that I want rounded over, and it comes through the hole, and then you just pull it through like that, and it rounds that over nice. If you want to come back the other way, you have to tip it back so that the smooth side stays up. It's one of the things about this alum, it does get fuzzy. It fuzzes out. A piece of latigo wouldn't do that, but it just, you know, that knife handled that remarkably well. So that's pretty much all I have for you today. Let's zoom back out. I'll say so long. Oh, thanks, Scott, for making such beautiful knives.